Okay. Sorry. Hold on. Let me just quickly stop sharing. I'm not too sure what's happened there. Let me just quickly go to last week's slides, I think, because I didn't get a chance to edit those. Why does it suddenly want to play with sound? Sorry about this, guys. Just 2 seconds. Oh, sorry, I just need to mute all the slides quickly. Not too sure why it's suddenly wanting us to listen to all of that. Sorry guys, I'm almost done. Alright. Okay, guys. So yeah, if you can't see anything or anything like that, then just unmute yourself and speak up, okay? Because while I'm presenting, I can't really see all the messages and whatnot. All right. Okay. So can everyone see experiential learning lesson 3? Speak up if you can't. Oopsie. Oh, my soul, what is going on? Okay. So it looks like we're going to have to present in this manner. Yeah, we're going to have to present like this. Sorry, I don't know why it's doing this today. Didn't do it on Monday. All right. So we're starting with lesson 3 of experiential learning today. We are on the chapter of getting the job. So the learning objectives for today are to gain confidence as an entrance to the job market as you learn how to curate professional CVs and cover letters. And then we're going to prepare to start identifying potential positions to apply for within the media industry and get excited about CV and cover letter creation. All right. So here's just your knowing and doing for the lesson. Understand how to conduct a job search, be aware of the importance of a CV and cover letter, become sensitive to group dynamics. Going to look at creating professional CV and cover letter. We're going to practice being objective in the development of both the CV and the cover letter. And then we're going to look at work in and function as a team to complete a complex task. Okay, so a quick recap from lesson 2. We looked at your online identity last week. Okay, so yeah, we discussed, things that you didn't want your employer to see and whatnot. So have any of you started to create a professional online presence? So that means via LinkedIn or anything like that? Okay, I'm going to take it as no. All right, guys. So for your first assignment, I'd highly suggest you get started on this because not only is it something that we're suggesting you do in class, but it is something that is going to be in your assignment. So I'd really suggest just getting going on something like that so that you have the time to focus on other areas of the assignment. Okay. So quick class discussion. Do any of you already have a CV? You can just unmute. Okay, perfect. And then for those who said yes or haven't said yes but do have one, do you update it regularly? Okay, so in general, your CV should just be updated as you've completed things. So, if you've completed your degree, you'll update it. If you've completed a contract, you'll update it, that kind of thing. So it's not something you need to tend to every single month because not every month something's going to change on your CV. But as things happen, that's when you need to start looking at updating them. Okay. And then, do any of you believe that you should change your CV according to the job that you're applying for?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and why do you say that?
Because different jobs are looking for different things on your CV requirements.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is as to why you would change your CV. But in general, I'm just going off of a general assumption. Majority of you, this will be your first degree that you're completing. Maybe you have a few jobs, or if you're working and studying, your experience will be somewhat limited because you guys are still so young. Again, I'm just generalizing here, so please excuse me if you don't fall within this description. So right now, I like to advise students that it's not necessary to change your CV according to the job application. And the reason being is because you may not necessarily have as much experience as you need to be able to chop and change. You also might not have as many qualifications to chop and change it. You see what I mean? So if you only have the one degree and you only have had 2 jobs, let's say that, then you're not really going to have much space to change them. So even for instance, on my CV, my stuff has remained fairly permanent. The only thing I've taken off of my 10 years of being out of school is the promotional jobs that I've done, like, when you go and work at clubs or things like that. Those are the only things that I've actually taken off because I still want them to see all my other relevant experience because I haven't exactly held 15 different jobs. All right. And then with education, I believe that you should always keep all your education on your CV. Whether it's relevant to that job or not, you may just list it differently. But because if they see, oh, okay, well, we want you to do our media, but we see that you have experience in HR, maybe something like that, they'll see, okay, then you are better equipped to integrate into our culture. You can help out more, or you have a better understanding of human resource procedures, hiring and firing and things like that, which may one day become part of your job. All right. All right, so let's get straight into it. So we're going to look at CV creation, the basics today. There's quite a lot of content to go into it, but it is actually quite a simple thing. So your CV is the true first impression and not your interview. The reason we say that is obviously because You'll first give in your CV, and then only after that will you then be invited to an interview. So your CV should include your personal details, such as your birth date, if you have a driver's license, what languages you speak, what area you live in, that kind of thing. Your work experience, that's quite self-explanatory. Your education and academic qualifications, and then special achievements. So this can then be, let's say there was a competition between all marketing students and your group won that competition, you can include something like that. Or if you were noted as being top of the class or anything like that, you can include that kind of thing. You could also just include some side things, if maybe you've accomplished something outside of school, outside of your education, you can also include that. And then ideally you want two references, which will then have either their email address or their cell phone number attached to it. Before you add anyone onto your reference list in your CV, you do need to ask them for permission first. The reason being is because firstly, they don't really want to be caught off guard when they get a call one day and maybe they're not that familiar with you. And then secondly, because of the POPI Act, you're unable to give out their information to other people without their permission. All right. Okay, so we're going to look more in depth at that now. So again, looking at the content, you need to ensure that all the content is relevant and concise and free of spelling and grammatical errors. Okay. So here it says you can ask a trusted friend to proofread it for you. My advice is put it into Microsoft Word, click on that editor option on the top right of the home page, and then you can set it into, is it casual, is it formal, is it professional, and then it'll show you all your errors and it'll give you different suggestions for things. That is definitely something I would suggest. Then your layout. Your layout needs to be logical and shows that you have a logical mindset and helps your prospective employer to find information easily. Okay, so make sure you use headings and yes, avoid lengthy paragraphs. Bullet points are good for CVs. They get to the point. You don't really want to discuss stories or, situations in your CV. It should just be the matter of fact kind of approach. And then with design, use color with caution, keep fonts professional and easy to read, ensure headings are formatted consistently. Okay, so basically the fonts and things like that, please, although it looks beautiful to use all this nice cursive and things like that, it's definitely not ideal because it creates difficulty with reading, and when you're sitting with 30 CVs on your desk, you're not really in the mood to struggle. Okay, so it could be that you're the most qualified person in the pile, but because your CV has proved to be challenging to read, it could decrease your chances of them actually finishing it. All right. So some good templates. I personally like Canva. I feel that you guys are also probably very well versed with Canva. And then there's also Google Docs. I'm not too familiar with that. So that's also why I suggest Canva. And it's free and you can get all those free designs and just edit them as you would like. All right. So looking at your profile summaries, the summary outlines, who you are and what makes you unique. It is not a CV, but a separate document with an overview of your achievements in bullet points. For example, if you guys go to page 12 of your textbook, you guys will see there's a better example. Obviously, I'm not too sure if you guys can all read this. And then the profile summary is different to your summary on LinkedIn, which has a conversational tone and full sentences. All right, so your profile summary is sometimes just a small little paragraph at the top of your CV that, that will give them a little bit of an idea of who you are, what your interests are, and that kind of thing. Whereas on LinkedIn, it is definitely, as you can see here, I've worked in the recruitment industry, quite long, etc. But you can see that each paragraph still gets to the point of it, all right? Moving on to profile summaries, slide 2. So your online summary on LinkedIn, for example, can really show your personality. You may not have much work experience, but showing your drive and ambition can sell you as an employee. To write yours, try to answer the questions in your guys' textbook on page 13. There is again another example on page 14, as we said earlier. So I really want to encourage you guys to just go through this. Again, I say this because of your assignment. This is something that we look at, all right? We do go through those questions, see if you've answered them in your summary section on your LinkedIn profile. Okay. Oh, guys, just in case anyone's wondering, we are doing a briefing today. So, yeah, definitely please stay till the end because that's when we will be going over the assignment. Excuse me. All right, looking at your personal details. So this needs to be at the top of your CV. So it'll be things like your birth date, your gender, your marital status, physical and postal address, contact number, professional email address, a photograph of yourself. What I also like to suggest is that you link, if you have a LinkedIn profile, which you should before you start submitting any CVs anyway, is to put your LinkedIn profile on there also. All right. And then with regards to things like your date of birth, just give your date of birth. Some people tend to put their ID number on there. I don't encourage that. It's obviously just a security thing. All right. All right. And then looking at your employment history. So the first job that is listed should be the most recent job. All right. That is just quite logical. We do the same thing with your educational history. You put your most recent to your least recent. So all the way at the bottom will be your high school. Okay. Include any employment, which includes part-time work, unpaid work, anything like that. As I say, I also tell my students if you've ever done promotional jobs, you should include that because it works into sales and product promotion. Okay. You should include all of this which is relevant to the job you're applying for. Okay, so again, because your experience may be limited, again, I'm assuming it's probably best to include almost everything that you have done. Again, also just dependent on the job. Doesn't really help if you're applying to be a kindergarten teacher and you're talking about your alcohol sales. All right. So you can include the month and the year that you started and ended the job, the name of the company, the title that you held when you were there. Were you an assistant? When you were a PA? Were you a salesperson? Did you do their social media? Were you involved with marketing? Things like that. The skills which you used, and then the responsibilities you held. Okay, that's all quite important. What I do like to add to that is all at the bottom, I just say reason for ending employment or leaving employment. Okay, especially if you do part-time work or contract work. Let's say the contract was only 3 months. Sometimes it's important to say that the contract had come to an end. It was a 3-month contract or anything like that. Because sometimes people think, oh, you jump around a lot. When the reality of it is actually that was just the nature of that job. You're only there for a short period of time. And then less relevant jobs may be listed briefly in another section labeled other employment. Okay. So there you can also say, maybe you help out for free at your youth church or anything like that. You can put it under other employments. All right. Then moving into your education. So you guys will note that this is done in the format that, or the layout and order that it should be presented in on your CV. So again, the most recent qualification should be listed at the top and then your least recent all at the bottom. So only go down to your matric, all right, where you matriculated, what subjects you took, that kind of thing. And then you may list your diploma at Boston Media House with a projected graduation date. Okay, so you guys are expecting to graduate start of next year. Your graduation should take place, but you should be done by the end of this year, November. So that is what you can then say. So you can say, let's say you started in 2021 to present, and then you can put in brackets projected graduation is end of 2023, something like that. Okay, just to give them an idea of how available will you be and things like that, and how close are you to finishing. So if your education history is limited, you may be tempted to include your matric subjects and results. Mention only your highest marks, which are basically your 75% and up, and whether you achieved a bachelor's pass. Okay, so obviously you get your certificate pass, you get your diploma pass, you get your bachelor's pass. So what you can also do with this is, what I like to suggest is, you can just say, the school that you matriculated at, the year that you matriculated, and then you just say your elective subjects. So that will then be, did you do core maths? Did you do maths lit? Did you do business studies, or did you do computer science? That kind of thing. So you'll just list those subject choices that you took. And yes, if you got a distinction, please mention that. If not, no need to mention it. All right. Excuse me. And then in the next section, you should highlight your achievements. Be sure to include the names of the institutions which recognized your excellence, the date or period of the achievement, and the criteria for the award, if applicable. So accomplishments can be such things as community and cultural awards and prizes, academic merit and merit awards, excuse me, colors for sports, professional affiliations and memberships, leadership roles. Let's say you were a prefect at school, or you were voted into some sort of leadership role at varsity or within a club or anything like that. And then you can include the responsibilities of that position. All right. So over here, you guys will see it does say watch. Unfortunately, Teams is not allowing me to play these videos with sound. So I really want to encourage you guys to go and watch these after the lesson. It's not very long. They're like 5 minutes each kind of thing. But please go and watch those. It is very relevant and will help you with your assignments. All right. But otherwise, you'll just be staring at someone miming. And I don't really want to do that. I'd rather take the time to focus on your brief. Okay. Moving further into information that works for your CV. The final section is your list of references. Okay, choose people who you have reported to directly, such as a manager or a lecturer. With a lecturer, I say this because I've also had that experience with my lecturers. When you are sitting in a class of, 30 students plus, you don't necessarily always get that one-on-one interaction with your lecturer. For example, my subject, I don't really need to be very hands-on with my students because I'm not teaching you guys, little nitty-gritty programs or anything like that, like maybe that you would experience in your other subjects. So those lecturers would be more hands-on with you and have probably been with you for more than 1 year. So if you have that reports with your lecturers, if you have more of a relationship with your lecturers, obviously professional at school relationship, then yes, I would say ask them if you can include them on your reference list. But if you're not familiar with your lecturer, or you've only really had them for 1 year and you haven't had much of that relationship with them, I wouldn't suggest including them because, if they get a call 3 years later, they can't really give an accurate description of who you are. All right. Excuse me. And then again, ask permission to put them on your reference list, as I discussed earlier. So you'll include their full name, the relationship you had with them, meaning were they your line manager? Was it your lecturer? Was it, anything like that? What was your professional relationship? Which organization they worked at, and then their contact number and business email address. All right. So with email addresses, that should definitely be included, but because people do change jobs, all right, that's why it's so important to have their personal contact number, not just their work contact number. And if they do give you their work contact number and their work email address, then you can maybe request, may I please include your personal cell phone number on here? The reason being is because obviously people change jobs. And if it's 3 years down the line and you haven't really spoken to your old manager, you're not going to know if they're still there. And then if you do find out they're not there, to quickly scroll and find someone else to put on your reference list could be quite challenging. All right. And then here on the right, it says, should you include interests and hobbies section? So if you have invested much of your spare time to writing, creating a podcast, or other creative passions which are relevant to the job, you can definitely include them. So for example, if you guys are going into media and you have a podcast, or you do creative writing or anything like that, that is all things that are relevant, and those are skills that you can use at work. So I would definitely say include them. But if you plan on saying that you like movies, hanging out with your friends and listening to music, rather don't include those because it doesn't actually tell us anything about you. Those are actually just normal human behaviors. All right. We all watch movies at some point. We've all hung out with our friends at some point. We all listen to music at some point. All right. So that definitely doesn't give you an insight into it. Okay. Okay, so then you have certain attachments that you can include with your CV. Please note, I tend to suggest to my students, don't include this in your CV application, all right? If they request it after the fact, definitely you can send it in to them, but I would not include it in my normal set CV that I send out to 20 different companies within a week, that kind of thing. So some job advertisements will request that you include these specific attachments or supporting materials with your application. So if they request that, remember, just do so with caution also, because it is a certified copy of your matric certificate, a certified copy of your diploma or degree. So with this, because you guys are still busy with your degree, you can also get a letter of registration and have that stamped by the varsity and have that certified, indicating yes, you are in your final year, yes, this is your projected graduation date. All right. So when you guys are doing maybe your internships or maybe you're already applying for work for next year, you can definitely do that. All right. And then a certified copy of your ID book or card, certified copy of your driver's license, and a photograph of yourself. Okay. So even though there is a photograph of you on your CV, on the front page, they may request a separate headshot. All right. So you can keep the file containing your CV and supporting materials so that it's easy to apply to jobs when they arise. I feel like that is very basic. It says that you must scan it into a PDF. The likelihood of us creating a hard copy CV is very rare. We tend to create it on our computers and then we'll print it if need be. So what I like to suggest is with information like this, if they haven't requested it, I would print it and just keep it on hand if you go for the interview, because then, and also a copy of your CV on hand for that interview, just so that if they do request it, you can say, well, you've already got it. All right. And then it's out of the way. So moving on to more attachments, here we're going to look at letter of reference. So though many companies will contact your references that you've given directly with specific questions, some may ask for a letter of reference or a testimonial. All right, so this testimonials and letters of references I feel are very applicable to people who are independent contractors. If you contract yourself out as, let's say, a photographer to someone, testimonials and things like that are very, very important. Okay. And it will have all the same information that a reference would, except it's written and it's easily accessible. Okay. Because if you did a photo shoot, for example, for someone, they don't really want to be called to hear about, so were they a good employee and stuff, when they've only spent one day with you. They can rather write a letter of reference or testimony about the work that you've done for them, okay, and how happy they were and this and that, maybe you made them extremely comfortable, whatever. Okay, so you can include things like that. So in your letter of reference, you should have an official institutional letterhead. So if you guys have ever gotten a letter of reference from, let's say, Boston Media House, you'll see the logos at the top with some of the information, address, and things like that. I would suggest getting that again if that is from an official institution. If it is from a client who, again, you just did photos for, they can just put their name underneath, their full name and surname. And then maybe you can ask them if you may please have the email address or their cell phone number in case. But ideally, just a safe testimonial will be fine for clients. So if it is digital, it should be very simple, formal and clean, of course. And then if it is a hard copy, you need to ensure that you have multiple copies and that you have them certified. So you can use guidelines on the pages 18 and 19 of your textbook to ensure all relevant information is included in the correct format. Okay, again, guys, I'd really encourage you to go and look at that. It's definitely going to help with your CV and even maybe your LinkedIn profile, see where you can fit these kinds of things in. Okay, so this is definitely going to be quite applicable to you guys. not everyone has a portfolio attached to their CV or portfolio that they keep for job applications. The reason being is because not everyone needs one. But when you're in the creative industry of designing, of creating ad campaigns or anything like that, or even people like architects, they have a portfolio. Excuse me, guys. So some job applications request a portfolio, especially for creative roles such as graphic designers or writers. They are selective about the work that, so you need to be selective about the work that you include, and then pay attention to specific requirements. All right. So if you're applying for a place that wants to do children's books or something like that, again, just a silly example, maybe not the best idea to include activist photography that you've done. Even though it might be great, it might not be within their genre and their scheme. Because remember that every company, especially when you're looking at creative people to design things for you, they have color schemes, they have genres, they have, eras of design that they want to keep. So they also need to see, are you capable of doing what we want? You may be great at doing what you do, but can you fall within our genre? All right. So that's very important. And then there are many specific types of work in set formats and file sizes to consider. So some students create a website with all their portfolio work. On LinkedIn, you can actually put it on there too, and then they can see a little preview of it. They can click on the link and they can go and view it. That's quite a handy little option that's on there, especially for all you creatives. And then you may use work created in the course of your diploma or degree. Okay, so that's also very important. You can use things that you've done in school, all right, because then they can see what are you capable of. Because if you've never had a job, how would you give them portfolio work that you did in an office or another company? So you can definitely include things that you have done at school. Sorry, I just want to drink some water. Excuse me, guys. All right. So moving on to your cover letter. So it is common practice to create a cover letter, and as you guys go about applying for jobs, you're going to experience this because every company needs you to write a cover letter specifically about them. So you will never really be able to recycle a cover letter. You can maybe recycle the sign-off and the introduction of yourself, but specific things you'll need to change. So it's an explanation of why you are an ideal fit for the role. So in your cover letter, this is what you'll need to include. So it will be your address at the top right corner, the name or title of the recipient and the organization's address. Maybe you really don't know who it is, so you can maybe say to whom it may concern or anything like that, or just the company name. And then your greeting. So here it says, "Dear hiring manager." So it says that you should find their name, or you can go and call their company and see who it is that you're applying it to, who will be receiving this, excuse me. But if there's no real way to know, they're like, oh, well, it just goes to HR. Then you can say to whom it may concern. All right, so that's a very broad term for if this is relevant to you, hello, that kind of thing. And then full paragraphs explaining, firstly, your intention to apply and for which role. That is very important. You need to include which position it is that you're applying for, because a lot of companies I've spoken to, if your cover letter is not well written, they don't know what position you're applying for, they do not even bother moving on to your CV. So that is very important, because your CV also doesn't really say, I'm applying for this position at your company. No, your cover letter says that. Okay, so you want to include that. Then an explanation of who you are and what you offer, which is specific to the role. Again, lean into your talents and things like that. And then gratitude for the opportunity and expectation, and the expectation that they will respond. So you can just say, thank you for taking the time to consider me for the position. I hope to hear from you soon, that kind of thing. And then a formal sign-off, which is yours faithfully, kind regards, etc. Okay, continuing on with your cover letter. So you need to use full sentences with correct spelling and grammar. So that's how it's also different to your CV. So your CV is very bulleted points, matter of fact, straight to it. Whereas your cover letter is definitely more of almost you selling yourself on there. All right. You need to use formal language, avoid all slang, abbreviations, emojis, and explanation points. As you can see, there's a little get it there. So you can see how that would appear unprofessional. All right. Also, don't really want to be shouting your CV at someone. And then do not ask them to help you or give you a chance. All right. That is definitely something that doesn't look very good. And be like, if you just give me the opportunity, I can show you that I'm capable or anything like that. Or I haven't found a job in X amount of months. You definitely don't want that. All right. It just doesn't read well, if I can put it like that. All right. Rather lean into your strengths, lean into the things that you are capable of, lean into your education, your past experience, your creativity, and your real abilities. And then over here it says avoid cliches. The cover letter is a chance to show who you are and what sets you apart. Okay. So a cliche is a cliche for a reason because it works. But what I would suggest is definitely don't put the normal cliches. I'm a hard worker and this and this. You can rather say I'm ambitious, I'm driven, that kind of thing. Okay. So you can use them but play on them. And then make reference to the company and their requirements stipulated in the vacancy advertisement. It shows that you pay attention. So that's very important. So that is why I said you won't really be able to recycle your cover letters, because when you're writing your cover letter, you need to research what projects have they done, what projects are they maybe busy with, who have they collaborated with, and you can mention that in your cover letter, that kind of thing. And maybe you can talk about how you really enjoy their work culture or anything like that, anything that you can really find. Okay, so make reference to that kind of stuff, and then again, you need to make reference to specific requirements. All right. Excuse me. Alright guys, so this is actually some of your homework for next week. I will be posting it on the WhatsApp group. So again, if you're not on it, please be on it before the end of the day. Okay, I can only add so many numbers before I eventually just give the link and people must join. And if they don't, then they may miss out. Okay, so in groups, you're going to review the vacancies you brought to class. So you guys remember last week I asked you to look at good profiles and bad profiles for LinkedIn, and to also look at, so now you're going to look at the vacancies that you guys need to do. So you can basically go and search a job that you would like to apply for. Okay, you're then going to take that and you're going to get into groups. Let's say 3 to 4 people a group. That's a good size. And you're going to develop a CV and a cover letter on behalf of a celebrity of your choice. So let's say you have found a radio position. And you go, okay, well, let's use Roger Good, let's use DJ Fresh, or any of the presenters. You go and research their history, their education, their work experience, and things like that, and you create a cover letter and a CV for them. All right. You're going to be them. Okay, you're going to fake a CV and a cover letter for them. So the reason why you guys are in groups is because you're going to divide these into sections. So one person can do your cover letter, one person can maybe do your education, one person can do your experience, etc., etc. So you will definitely need to do research on this celebrity, and then you guys just need to collaborate and put it all together. And then next week we are going to choose one member to give us feedback about what was the challenges and the process of learning from creating a CV and a cover letter. All right. So we're going to go straight into the next lesson. So I don't really feel that we will need to brief you guys, but basically we are going to be looking at your first assignments brief. Hopefully we'll have enough time for you guys to ask any questions. And then for next week, please remember the CV and cover letter creation. I will post it on the group as a reminder with some of the details. please bring that to class next week, Friday, so that we can then present and discuss it. All right. And then in preparation for next week, you can, well, for the next lesson, we're going to cover pages 26 to 44 of your textbook. Okay, let me just quickly stop sharing, and then we can, whoopsie, move into the next lesson. Oh, sorry guys, I see there's stuff in the chat. Is it possible to not have any references on the CV? Look, it is possible to have, sorry, I'm only seeing your message now, Kupano. It is possible to not have any references on your CV, but I would definitely advise that you avoid that as much as possible. Again, you know, you can maybe put a lecturer on there or anything like that. Okay, so definitely, excuse me, make sure that you have references, at least 1 or 2. That is the ideal number. Okay, I'm just quickly going to open up the next lesson for you guys so we can get started, and then we will move into your brief. Okay. While I'm busy doing that, guys, you can please put your name, surname, and student number in the chat so that I can take you down for register, please. Remember, attendance of the online classes are also still taken. So, yeah. Right, great. This one doesn't have any voiceovers. Perfect. Let me just quickly share it. Sorry, guys. Sorry if my voice is very scratchy and I sound exhausted. I'm a little bit sick today, so I don't sound too great. Okay, let me just give you guys, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to put all your name, surname, and student numbers in the chat, and then we'll move into the next lesson. Okay, great. Let's get started. Okay, so if you can't see experiential learning lesson 4, please speak up. All right, I'll take it as everyone can see it. Okay, so let's get going into lesson 4. We are still looking at getting the job. So the lesson objectives for this lesson is to absorb what to do and what not to do in various interview scenarios. So we've already covered the CV and the cover letter. Now let's say you've submitted it and they've invited you for an interview. So we're going to think about what professional interview behavior constitutes. Going to accept the responsibility to acquire the necessary skills and build an adequate level of confidence that will allow for professional and eloquent responses to interview questions. So the knowing for this lesson is demonstrate basic understanding of the interview process. We will go over that. Understand the importance of different types of interviews. Understand the role and importance of different types of interview questions. And illustrate a basic understanding of general interview etiquette. Then doing, we're going to develop interview questions for specific media-related positions. Going to look at role-play interview scenarios as both the interviewer and the interviewee critically review the interview process by observing classmates. We will be conducting these mock interviews, so it's going to be relevant with the CV and cover letter you've created for the job application. Okay. So again, we're building on these things. So once we get that out the way, then you guys will see it's quite easy to go from there. All right. And again, this is also very relevant to your guys' assignment. And then we're going to reflect on your current ability to conduct an interview by asking the best possible questions, as well as be a professional interviewee by giving appropriate answers. All right. Excuse me. So this is the activity recap that we'll be doing next week. In your groups, you've chosen a media-related vacancy and developed a CV and cover letter on behalf of a celebrity of your choice. Firstly, you guys are going to provide constructive feedback on your teammates' work, meaning, you can say, well, we could have done more research on education or anything like that. And then one member of the group, so you guys are going to weakest link this person, is going to report back the process and feedback and what was learned in the process to the class. All right. So again, guys, in groups of 3 or 4, you're going to report this information back to me, and then we can all discuss it, and you'll see everyone probably had the same challenges. All right. So looking at the theory of interviews, should your cover letter and CV be successful, you may be invited to interview. The invitation may be delivered in an email or in a phone call. Be ready for either. Excuse me, guys. So what I always say to my students is, when you are applying for jobs and you get a phone call and you don't recognize that number, always answer it in a professional manner, because it could be spam, yes, could be the wrong number, yes, but it could also be the person who's calling you to have a quick discussion with you and then see if they want to invite you to an interview for the job that you've applied for. So always answer the phone in a professional manner unless you're 100% certain you know who's on the other end, like a friend or a family member, okay? So that is something that I always suggest during that period of applications. So when you respond to the phone call or you're busy on it, you should be enthusiastic and professional. The reason we say enthusiastic is because they're going to first call you and they're going to have a discussion with you before they tell you, well, we'd like you to come in for an interview. The reason that they do this is because they kind of want to gauge if they would like to move forward, because your credentials may look great, your CV may look great, but if you sound extremely uninterested in the position, they're not really going to be too keen on having an interview with you. All right. And then match the tone of the person who contacts you. This is meaning, if they make a joke, okay, that means that you can make a joke, that kind of thing. If they're extremely serious, keep it professional and, just to the point. And then be quick, even just say that you need to confirm the date. So if they contact you and they say, so when will you be available for an interview? Don't keep them on the line and say, oh, let me just quickly check, and then 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes later, then you're eventually getting back to them. Rather tell them, can I give you a call back, or can you give me a call back at this time, and then I will have checked my schedule. All right. And then be honest about your availability. Don't set an interview for a time where you think that the plans that you originally made during that time are going to fall through. All right. Rather set it for a time that you know that you will be available. Also, back-to-back interviews are a bad idea. You need at least a little bit of time in between them. Firstly, to quickly go and read about which job it is that you're applying for with which company before you go into that interview. And secondly, if you're traveling from interview to interview, you need to give yourself extra time so that you can get there 5 minutes early in case you get lost, in case you don't get parking, whatever the situation is. Okay. So back-to-back interviews are a bad idea. Even if you're doing them online, as I said, you want that little bit of time in between so that you can go, okay, interview 1 done. Okay, what company is interview 2? What exactly is their position? What did I write in my cover letter to them? All right. You just need that little bit of time in between your interviews. So starting off with the interview process, I've already spoken about the call or the email. A lot of the time they will call you. Even if they're calling you to set a time for your interview, we can see this as a screening call. So before your prospective employers schedule a job interview, there may be a screening call where their recruitment HR or their talent person will call you. So they are firstly going to assess whether you match the level of expertise and professionalism portrayed in your CV, because it's extremely easy to create a professional CV. You know, you can also have someone do it for you. It's their job, and they create this beautifully polished CV. But then when they speak to you, they see that what was attractive in your CV, although it wasn't necessarily untrue, does not necessarily match with you. Maybe the style of writing and things like that. Okay, so it's very important that your CV is still true to yourself, what it is that you want to do, and things like that. Okay, and then you have the opportunity to ask questions about the role and the organization to assess whether it suits you. So that's a two-way thing. They're going to ask you questions, and then you can also ask them questions. All right. A screening call, usually they will ensure that you have a little bit of time to chat, but if they're just calling to see, okay, are you actually worth the interview, it'll be a quick 5-minute call, and then by the end of it they'll be like, oh yeah, so we'd like to invite you for an interview. A screening call is a lot more structured and may take longer, so this will filter out the unsuitable candidates. So once they've done that, the next phase of the interview process will be in-depth, usually in person or via Zoom, Skype, video calls, with one or more employees in the department you may be joining. So usually the people that will join this meeting is usually someone from HR to ensure that, you know, everything's above board and that you are who you say you are on your CV, that kind of thing, that your credentials match what you're discussing. Sometimes it'll be your line manager, the person that you'll be reporting to directly. And then sometimes, you know, depending on the size of the company, maybe someone higher up, maybe the department manager or the department head will also be included on that call, whether or not they speak or not. A lot of times they just sit in, all right, but they are listening, they are paying attention, they just aren't interviewing you directly. Okay, so you need to be, they want to look at your enthusiasm, your confidence, and calm. And this will all help them trust you. And then remember that your interviewers want you to be the right person for the job. So when we say that, we mean they're not going to try and ask you tricky questions and catch you out, you know, and like, see, you didn't know that. They actually want to see what do you actually genuinely have to offer us and can we make this work, because recruitment is an expensive process and very time consuming for companies and employers. So they would love it if their first application, they got the first interview they did and all of that was the perfect person. That would be so ideal for them. But unfortunately, that's usually not the case. So it is necessary to do interview preparation for this phase. Just like how you had to research for your cover letter, you're going to need to research for your interview. All right. So in preparation, have the copies of your IDs and your certificates on hand. Read over the job description again. So that's why I said before you walk into that interview, make sure you know what company it is, what the position is, all of that. Make sure you know everything. You've read over it quickly in your car or whatever. Think of examples where you have displayed the skills and abilities described in the job. And then you can plan logistics to get to the right place at the right time. So as I said earlier, back-to-back interviews, not a good idea. And then always arrive early even if it is an online meeting. So don't arrive 20 minutes early for your online meeting. Arrive 5 minutes early. That's more or less the appropriate time. Excuse me. All right, and then moving further into the interview preparation. You're going to prepare for the kinds of questions which may be asked. There are more examples on pages 31 to 32 of your textbook. Again, guys, I would highly suggest you go and look at this because it is part of the mock interview preparation. So there are different types. You get open and closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions are kind of like you have the ability to talk freely. Close-ended questions is yes, no responses, either or responses. Okay, it's very short and they're kind of forced because there is only two ways to respond to it. Okay. Leading questions, they are reflective questions. This is a lot of time to reflect on things that you have done, maybe on yourself, and things like that. Direct and specific questions that will be about your education, your experience, history, and things like that. And then behavioral questions and hypothetical questions. This is a lot of time where they'll talk to you about, have you ever had to handle this? Or if you had to fire this person or that and that. Okay. So they'll want to see, how do you behave in certain situations or scenarios? What is your thoughts in that? And then hypothetical questions, they kind of set the stage for you and say, okay, so how are you going to go about it? Or, how are you going to discuss the budget with this client? So it won't necessarily just be about how you behave, it'll also be about how you think. Okay, and then moving further into the preparation. Preparation can help your confidence and boost your engagement. You should be aware of your body language. That's very important in an interview. You don't really want to slope down in your chair and have your arms crossed, not making eye contact, things like that. It may show that you're uninterested. And also we tend to be less trusting of individuals like that, all right? It's just a normal human nature thing. So you want to make sure you're sitting up straight, they can see you, they can see, your shoulders are pulled back, you look open to receive information and to discussion. Make sure that you understand the question before you answer. There is absolutely nothing wrong with asking someone to rephrase a question. And I say that because, bear in mind, if these individuals have been working in this industry for 20 years, for example, they're going to know a lot of abbreviations and jargon that you have yet to learn. You will learn it, but you haven't learned it yet. So when they use that kind of thing in an interview, it doesn't help that you try and respond, but then you respond incorrectly, not because you didn't know the answer, but because you didn't understand the question. So you can always ask, will you please rephrase that question? I don't understand what you meant by that abbreviation or by that jargon or anything like that. And then sincerity in your responses and in your body language. Be genuinely interested. Show your interest, show your excitement. You can use your hands and that kind of thing. Be expressive, okay? And then the possibility of an on-the-spot skills test is there. This is very rare, but it does happen. I do know a few people that have had this. They won't necessarily do it on the spot, like it's a surprise. They'll usually tell you, your interview's from this and this time, and please ensure that you are available after the interview for 45 minutes, something like that. Then you can already say, oh, okay, they're going to see if there might be a test or anything like that. Okay. Or they'll, after the interview, they'll say, okay, so that went well, we'd love for you to do our skills test. Can you come in end of the week or tomorrow or whatever, or later today? Okay. So it's not really, because they don't know your availability. So they're not really going to surprise you with it. There's always the cues. Okay, so then we use the STAR interview response method. So this is quite an easy little thing to remember. It does work quite well. So yeah, just get familiar with it. One of the most challenging types of interview questions are behavioral. So for example, a question is, can you tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision regarding a colleague? Okay, so this is behavioral. How did you go about it? How did you feel about it? And you're also leaning into a reflective question. Okay, so here you can use the STAR method. So firstly, the situation. You'll describe the situation. John kept coming into work late, and we were on a tight deadline, so it was really impacting our process because he's an essential part of our team. So him coming in late was becoming problematic. The task. Explain the task that you had to complete. Your manager said to you, if John is late one more time, we're going to have to let him go. So your task is basically to ensure he's not late. The action. Describe the actions that you took. Maybe you went and spoke to John and you found out that he's having transport issues, or the transport that he's using is unreliable. So that's why he's late the whole time and whatnot. But then you look further into it and you find out that one of the people on the team lives in the same street. Okay, there you go. Now they can carpool, and that is the result. And then explain the results of your actions. You discuss the carpooling situation to them, and after that, John was always on time. Okay, so there you go. So the reason that that's viewed as a behavioral question is because they'll see, did you go out of your way to solve the problem? Were you creative about it? Did you choose to scold the individual and tell them to fix it and sort it out and get right? Or did you try and assist them? That kind of thing. Were you trying to be a team player? Or were you just telling them, listen, if you're late again, you're going to get fired. So I don't know what to tell you. Don't be late. You know, that kind of thing. All right. More interview preparation. All right. So this is going to lean into your appearance and the lighting. We can kind of disregard the COVID awareness, but I do know some places are still quite strict with that. And then using their name. All right. So the way you respond to questions is one aspect of making a good impression in an interview. But here are some other elements to take into consideration. Your appearance. Dress in a way that matches the role you're applying for. Airing to more formal and polished. Basic rule, I'm sure almost everyone is aware of this. Rather be overdressed than underdressed. Okay? But don't be overdressed as if you're going to matric dance, but you're applying to be the receptionist. All right? There is that level of, what do you think you will be doing here, seeing as this is how you've come to your interview. All right? A little bit overdressed is perfectly fine. Always want to be professional and look appropriate. Okay? You can also go and look at their website. Maybe you know where their office is and you can recall what people were wearing, things like that. Sometimes they suggest that you can contact HR and ask them, what is your dress code at work? You know, I'm coming in for an interview. I'd like to know what your dress code is. That kind of thing. And then lighting and sound. This is obviously specific to video interviews. Ensure that you are in a clean, quiet space and that your face is clearly visible in the light. No light coming from the back because it will create a silhouette. Ensure that there's maybe a window or light behind your laptop to shine onto you. The background is also quite important. You don't really want them seeing your folded up laundry on your bed that you haven't put away, or towels hanging on the door, or anything like that, okay? You either want an extremely tidy background, it's fine if they do see your background, you can have it extremely tidy, or have just a plain background. Make sure you're sitting against a wall or something, okay? No open cupboards, things like that, because it does draw attention away from your interview and from you, because then people become interested in, oh, what can I see that's funny in the background? All right. And then COVID awareness. As I said, majority of the time you can disregard this, but I do know some places may still be a little bit finicky with this. So wear a mask over your mouth and nose during a face-to-face interview. So the assumption is now they won't ask, you won't need to do this unless they specifically ask. So that's why I do tend to carry, even myself, I always carry a mask in my laptop, in my handbag or something, or in my car, just in case I walk into a place and they're like, oh, sorry, please put a mask on, especially if it's for a job interview. You don't really want to be like, well, I don't have to wear a mask, because maybe you're there for the interview, but all your work's going to be hybrid. So, it's just half an hour of your time with a mask on. All right. And then use their name. All right. Avoid madam and sir, and instead use the name that they use to introduce themselves. If you're unsure of pronunciation, check with them. All right. If you're not too great with names, like how I am, there are ways to get around that. All right. You can then maybe directly refer to them and go, so as you had mentioned earlier, and then you continue instead of going, so as John mentioned earlier, that kind of thing. Okay, so you can actually direct your conversation towards them so that everyone else in the meeting is aware of who you are speaking to and about. All right, what not to do. Don't talk badly about other people or companies that you've worked for or that you've been for an interview for, or anything like that. It looks really bad. The reason that looks really bad is because firstly, they're going to think, well, if this person doesn't get this job, are they going to badmouth us? Then, if we do give this person the job and we fire them, are they going to badmouth us? It can come off as and it's an unappealing character trait within the job work industry, because you don't want people bad mouthing your company, especially if they come across as someone who enjoys talking badly about other companies. And then don't interrupt or speak over the interviewer. This will happen. All right, it is going to happen. You will interrupt once or twice. They will interrupt you once or twice. It is perfectly fine as long as you know how to handle it. You go, oh, sorry, please continue, or whatever. Okay. But it will happen. If it happens, I promise you, if it doesn't happen, I will be very surprised. But it will definitely happen. Do not be late. That is very self-explanatory. If you are late, call them and tell them, I'm so sorry, I am on my way. Unfortunately, there's been an accident on the highway. I am stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, whatever the situation is. And then tell them, would you like to reschedule, or can I still come? I'm not too sure what time I will be there, but it should be between 45 minutes or whatever. Would you still be able to see me then, or would you like for us to reschedule? Okay, that kind of thing. Always let them know when you're going to be late. And then don't show annoyance being asked a particular question. Okay, so they are definitely going to ask you to basically repeat your entire CV to them at some point. Not all companies or interviews do this, but a lot of them do. And it is sometimes exhausting because you're sitting there thinking, but you've asked for my CV. I got the interview with my CV, so why are you asking me where did I go to school? All right, bear in mind, they have seen multiple people. They're not keeping track of that. And yes, they also want to just add to the corroboration of what is on your CV. During your first interview, you will not initiate money talk unless they bring it up. But if it's not brought up, you don't bring it up, especially when there is, excuse me, a salary on the advert. All right. They will bring it up with you. If not, don't bring it up, because if you've applied for that job, it means that you are satisfied with the salary advertised. Okay, so they don't necessarily need to bring it up with you until contract negotiation comes up. And then don't get distracted by your phone. It should be off or on silent. I usually say put it on airplane mode and put it in your handbag, or if you just want to put it on silent, make sure it's not on the table, because otherwise it like starts buzzing across the table and the whole glass table starts shaking. It is a little bit awkward. Rather leave it in your bag, leave it in your car, leave it in your suitcase, whatever, and make sure it just doesn't ring. Even the vibration can sometimes be quite intrusive. Continuing on with the interview process, there are some questions which are more difficult than others, and you can read about them in detail on page 43 of your textbook. So here they'll look at your personal weaknesses, your theoretical questions, your reflective questions, and your personal questions. All right, guys, again, I really want to encourage you to please go through these. We will be covering them a little bit more when we're doing your mock interviews, but definitely go and read over these so that you can prepare for these mock interviews and get ahead of work. All right, and also, again, it's very relevant to your assignment, so I'd highly suggest go and read those. All right, so here's just a quick overview of the process. So firstly, it's your application, CV, cover letter, and supporting attachments. Great. Your screening call filters the most likely candidates. Then you'll go to your first interview. It's a chance to meet your future colleagues and make a good impression. Possible, rare, but still possible, the skills test. The company will give you a take-home test to assess your abilities, or they may request that you do the test on site. And then finally, the final interview. This will be with shortlisted candidates that have been narrowed down using all of these steps. All right, then the final step is the offer. This is where you are able to talk about salary. Okay, so don't be discouraged if you don't get the job. Just keep applying. Obviously, it will come to you. And then if you are offered the job, you need to navigate the salary negotiation. So firstly, do research on what the job pays in your area. Okay, so when we say in your area, we don't mean like, okay, you live in Hatfield, so what is everyone getting paid in Hatfield? We mean, what are people within that company being paid for sitting in the same position as you? Try and see if you can find that out. Obviously, don't really ask them directly, because sometimes you're sitting in the exact same position, but you are earning differently to someone else. Then look at the industry standard for that position, so not just within their company, but what is the industry generally paying people that are sitting in a position like this. All right, that kind of thing. And then find out if the company offers benefits like medical aid or pension, UIF, etc. That's very important, especially if you're going into permanent employment. So usually permanent employment, there may be pension fund. You need to look into that because a lot of time they expect you to do your own pension, and then they will need to pay your UIF. But medical aid and things like that, not necessarily always included. All right, unless you work for government department, majority of them do have the option to take medical aid. And then analyze your personal income needs. All right, so let's say you've applied for a job and they've advertised salaries between 12 and 15,000 rand before tax. Okay, so what you got to do first is you got to go and look at how much tax am I going to pay, because that could be a huge difference between yes I could live off of 12 and no I can't live off of 12, because you first got to go look at what your tax deductions are going to be. Okay, you need to look at that percentage, then deduct that, add that. Then you need to add your rent, your petrol, how much is it going to cost you to travel to work every day, how much do you need to pay medical aid, insurance, or whatever, your general expenses. And let's say what they're offering is not what you want. Or you could live off what they're offering, but you're telling them, yeah, it's going to cost me 25,000 rand a month to live. But they're offering between 12 and 15. They're going to say to you, why did you apply for the job? All right, so you need to be realistic with them. What I generally say is, let's say they tell you a set number. They say, oh no, we'll pay you 12. I usually say, try and push on that extra 10%. All right, that's a nice little guide of going about it. Okay, but ensure that you know what your after-tax payments are going to be, because as I said, that can genuinely be the difference between yes I can live off of 12 and no I can't live off of 12. All right, because the amount that is advertised is before tax. All right, and then if you know that your skills and time are worth more, respectfully ask if it is possible to be paid more. Okay, so even if you can live off of that 12, but you're sitting there thinking, sure, I'm working for you guys probably 12 hours a day, 4 times a week, this and this, look at all these things I have to run, these are quite high-end things and I have so much to offer, you can ask for more. All right, don't be shy. The worst thing that they can do is say no, or counter offer you, so you can still get maybe what you want. All right. All right, so again, this is going to be done during your guys' mock interviews. Just going to brief you guys on the activity quickly. So based on the chosen vacancy, you're going to create 4 interview questions for the role. All right. So if you're interviewing for a radio position, please don't ask the person if they can make croissants. What does that have to do with radio? Okay, you see what I mean? It needs to be relevant. So you're going to create those 4 questions, and then you're going to get into groups of 4. So for your mock interviews, so let's say for your CVs and cover letter, be in groups of 4. All right. So that we can just stay in one. You guys can just stay in your original groups. Because I said between 3 and 4, but let's just move it up to 4. If you can't get 4, that's fine. Then I will sit in with your mock interviews for the 4th person. Okay, then you'll get into groups of 4. They'll be divided into 2 pairs. One person will interview the other, and then they'll swap. The other 2 will then make notes on that. Then the people that are making notes will interview one another, and the 2 that were interviewed previously will make notes on that. These notes will need to be kept on hand because we are going to go through them and we're going to give feedback and discuss them. All right. This is a really, really, really good activity, guys, to start practicing your interview questions. Okay. A lot of students from last year were a bit like, this is fine. After the fact, they realized, oh my soul, I get so nervous when I don't understand a question. I need to learn how to deal with that. And those are some of the important things that I want you guys to focus on. Learning how to deal with something that you don't understand, learning how to deal with that stress. Because I know that you can all discuss what you do, but can you do it in a formal setting? Can you do it when you don't actually understand that question? How will you go about that? That is very important skills that we need to develop with you guys this year. Okay, so quick reflection. consider what you learned in the pre-recording in your textbook and the mock interview processes. So we're going to be looking at this again after your mock interviews. So what parts was difficult or scary and why? What areas in the interview process are your strengths? This is also why your notes are important. What areas of the interview process will need development, and will you use this lesson for your internship? Okay. All right. So in your guys' next class, we won't necessarily be doing the mock interviews just yet. Okay, so don't worry, I will be briefing you guys on all of that by the end of the day. So again, if you're not on that WhatsApp group, please get on it. If you see your friend who's meant to be on it isn't on it, send them the link, because I will not repeat homework. Or if someone says, oh, I'm not on the group, I'm like, I've given you every opportunity to get on the group, so now there's no excuse. So if you're missing out because you failed to join the group, yeah, you're going to have me to deal with. All right. Okay. So we will be covering all of that. Okay, guys. I think I see a message. Sorry, let me quickly go into it. Oh, it's your guys' student numbers. Thank you guys very much for that. It's a big help, because sometimes your guest name on the call doesn't have your full name and surname. So when I send it in, then sometimes they're like, but we don't know who this specific person is. You know, like maybe use a nickname or something. So this is a big help. Thank you, guys. All right. Excuse me. I think let's just take, because we are ahead of schedule. So let's just take, I think we'll take a quick 4 minutes just to gather ourselves. Guys, please make sure that you are still on the call. I will be checking if you left the call early, but you've dropped your student number. If you left the call early, I will not be including people on the register. Okay. So if you see one of your friends logged off and put their student number there, I suggest you tell them to log on very quickly, okay? Because I will only be taking the people that are still here at the end of the lesson. All right. Unless they can tell me, listen, I had load shedding, then I get it. But I'm also not going to believe if 4 people tell me they had load shedding, because I'm going to be like, where do you live? And I will go and check if you had load shedding. All right. So yeah, let's give it ourselves just those 4 minutes. If anyone that hasn't heard, because it doesn't really, okay, no, actually maybe it does look like you've all put your student numbers here. All right, if you haven't, please do so. Put your student number down, and then yeah, if you guys have any questions, we are going to go over your brief in the next bit. I'm going to open it up so long that yeah, you guys can just take this time to chill a little bit.